I think what's confusing for people is it starts to feel binary. Like, am I going to think positively or negatively about this? Or am I going to think I don't have any right because I don't have a PhD and I'm not a published author? Or am I going to think it's fine? Like we want to simplify things down, and there's literally like hundreds to millions of thoughts available to us about any given circumstance, and even ones that for me could be believable and could empower me to do what I want.
Mornings are better with a warm beverage, even for Latter-day Saints. Meet Postum, the ideal coffee alternative and proud sponsor of This Week in Mormons podcast. Spotted on the coffee aisle at Smith's Grocery or at your local nearby store. Can't locate it? No worries. Order it at postum.com. Explore delicious recipes to tailor your Postum experience. Start your day off right with Postum.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to This Week in Mormons. I'm your host, Matt, with my sister, Melissa.
Hi, Maddie. How's it going this week?
Things are going really, really well. I'm excited for our guest today.
Yeah, me too.
If our mother could choose another child to add to the family, it would be this guest that we have with us. We have with us today Jody Moore. Jody, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes. Hi. Thank you. Maybe I want to join your family too.
You do. It's pretty fun, Jody. I'm not going to lie. We're a pretty good crew.
Yeah, my name is Jody Moore. I am a life coach, which sounds really bizarro, I think. But I started 10 years ago. I was living the life I thought I always wanted, having babies, got married, and was born and raised in the church, and trying my best to live the way I thought I was supposed to, and yet really, really unhappy, and felt bad about that because I had all the things I thought, healthy kids, a good marriage, all of that. Anyway, I discovered coaching and just went down a rabbit hole of like, why didn't someone tell me this earlier? And started just teaching it to other people. So I'm best known for my podcast, Better Than Happy, but that's what I do now, is help other people who are already mentally healthy, but just want to kind of go good to great or be more emotionally regulated. And that's what I do.
Yeah. And Jody, I would say that most of our listeners probably know who you are and what you do because you're so wildly popular, but especially among LDS people. And that's kind of your, I don't know, wheelhouse, right? Is kind of combining this perspective of looking at life from LDS values. Would you say that's right?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I first dove into the world of self-help, I found it was like lots of colorful language and lots of, liberal thinking about marriages and all kinds of things. And yet the tools were so powerful to me that I just saw how they gave me kind of a how-to for living my more conservative religion. And so I wanted to just provide a space for people that have similar values, LDS people, or similar, more conservative traditional values, to apply self-help. And so that's what I do now.
So I'm a little bit of an outsider to this world.
Good.
So I have a couple of questions along this line. Okay, So what is the difference between a life coach and a therapist? Like in what you do, like how is it different?
Yeah, it's there is some overlap because it's both mental and emotional health. But if you think about this in the world of physical health, when we are injured, let's say I break my arm, I need a doctor to take an x-ray and set a cast and all that. But the rest of the time, it's not like I wouldn't want to think about my physical health. I might want to go to the gym. I might want to hire a personal trainer. I might want to hire a nutritionist to help me figure out what to eat. And so life coaching works in the world of mentally already healthy, but wanting to do even more or become stronger. Or just navigate, like our bodies, if we just sat and did nothing, would deteriorate, right? And that's true with our mental and emotional health. If we do nothing to strengthen it, just being in the world and aging and all of that will deteriorate our mental and emotional health. So this is maintenance and strengthening for your mental health. But if you have a mental illness, or even maybe sometimes a chemical or hormonal imbalance creating problems, you would need a clinical therapist.
Yeah. Okay. So I work at BYU Idaho, and I know a lot of students that want to be like trainers, right? Physical trainers.
Yes.
And so life coaching is like a physical trainer for mental and emotional health.
That's right.
Oh,
exactly.
I would have never thought of that. So
Yeah.
you've opened my mind
There you
to
go.
things that I
And
never had.
I will say again, there's overlap too, because I have clients sometimes who either therapy just wasn't the right fit for them, and they find lots of success through coaching, or more commonly, they do benefit a lot from therapy, but then it only can take you to a certain point, right? The doctor at a certain point is like, now go try to eat well and get drink water and go on a walk every now and then, and so it's kind of that good to great space.
And is that what you kind of felt like was happening to you when you said like everything was good, everything was should have been fine, I should have been happy? Is that
Yeah.
kind of the space that you were living in?
Yeah, that's exactly it. I mean, and I did go to a therapist actually at that point because I was like, why do I like just my confidence went down? I just was unhappy with my life. And I thought, I don't know, I guess I'll go to a therapist. Well, and there's lots of different kinds of therapy out there. And I'm a big fan of therapy, by the way. But, the person I went to was like trying to diagnose what was wrong with me. Well, nothing was
Mhm.
wrong with me. I just have a human brain that's like, that now had 2 babies at home and just,
Mhm.
I'm just a healthy human so therapy just for me was not the right fit. And for many people, I mean, you even think about something like a marriage, right? Which we hear a lot of talk about going to marriage counseling or marriage couples therapy, if you will. In my mind, and again, there are some great couples therapists out there, but being married is super hard,
Yeah.
right? Just like
Yeah.
tying yourself and your life to another person and going through what we go through of like the massive dopamine hit of falling in love into where that naturally settles down, and then you have what's left over and everything gets more real. Like that's all a natural, healthy, normal process. So it doesn't require therapy because nothing's wrong. It's just really hard. So having some extra support and some extra tools through coaching of both understanding yourself and your spouse and all of that can take you through that hard thing and use it to then refine you, which is what I believe is the doctrine of our church. Is we're here to become like our heavenly parents, and we become like them through challenging things. And sometimes life gives us challenges, but other times we might choose to go through, we might set goals, or we might choose to get married, and those challenges either make us bitter or make us better. And coaching is, for me and my clients, been a really powerful way to use the challenges of this life to refine us rather than to become traumatized by them.
Yeah. That
Yeah.
makes good sense. Yeah. Jody, I started listening to your podcast a long time ago. Like, I think you were brand new. And at the time, I had 2 teenage daughters at home.
Okay.
And I really used a lot of what you taught to help bring them from teenager to adulthood.
Mm.
We totally talk in Jody Moore terms at our house, right? Like, what's your thought behind that? Those kind of things.
Mm.
I think a lot of what you do is, to me, it's like reframing or shifting your perspective in the way that you're looking at things.
Yeah.
So I wondered if it'd be okay if we talked about some of the most common things that people maybe their thoughts about are not helping them,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe just like some of your thoughts behind that. So could we start with parenting? Can we start with parenting teenagers?
Melissa,
What
you're going to
are
make me feel uncomfortable now. Now
no,
I don't think I
So-
like where we're going.
we
You
try
think
to do that
Melissa-
at least once an episode. Yeah.
I think Melissa's going to make you feel that way. Wait till I coach you, Matt. When
Yeah.
you said you were new, I was like, oh, good. I'm going to coach him.
Yeah. Well, Matt has 2 high school seniors. They're both
Okay.
I
boys,
do.
and they're his youngest. And
Mm.
listen, parenting teenagers isn't easy, but what's the thing, or if you're able to say, like, what's the thing that parents could do to just shift their thinking a little bit that would help so much?
Oh man, it's so crazy that you're asking me this because, and you said you're at BYU Idaho, Matt. I
Yeah.
just literally last night flew back from Idaho Falls from taking
Oh,
my
yeah.
son up to BYU Idaho this weekend.
How fun.
First day of school today, right?
Yeah.
Fun and terrible.
Yeah, I know. I feel so sad for anybody who sends their children here. We will
No.
love them and nurture them and do our
No.
best with them, but it's a scary, it's hard, right?
Oh my gosh. And he's my oldest. So it's
Uh-huh.
my first experience of having a child leave home and
Mhm.
watching him go through the fear and nerves of that. So, like, my own pain of him leaving combined with the pain of your child being in
Yeah.
pain, I'm just like, this is a lot.
I
So
cried, Jody. I sat in the dorm
me
room
too.
crying. I was like, I never cry, but I'm so sad right now.
It's terrible, but also really important. So anyway, Melissa, back to your question. Yeah, I think that I mean, there's so many things, of course.
Right,
So we
right.
have our children struggling, right, through sometimes no fault of their own, like either just life or maybe they have an illness or something they're dealing with, right? And then we have our children. I kind of like put those kids into one bucket or that situation in one bucket. Then we have this other bucket where our kids are making choices that we know are the wrong choices for sure, because we know, right?
Yeah,
Or at
yeah.
least they go against our values or what we've taught them, what we think is in their best interest. Those are probably the two main areas I end up coaching on the most with parents. And in the end, it comes down to a couple of things. It comes down to, I think, first, fully understanding the gospel principle of agency.
Yeah.
It feels like, and I think part of this is biological, right? We're biologically wired to protect our young.
Mhm.
And so it feels like something's gone terribly wrong when they are suffering or struggling. And it's natural for us to be sad and to have negative emotions as well. But the reality is actually we're all supposed to struggle, right? And that
Mhm.
that goes back to our doctrine of opposition in all things. Like we actually weren't sent here on a pleasure cruise to Earth, much to my dismay. We were sent here to struggle. And so again, just back to what I was talking about earlier with my son, like I want to feel I call it clean pain and dirty pain. So I want to feel
Okay.
the clean pain of sadness, right? When I see my child struggling, or disappointment when I see my child make decisions that I don't think are ideal. That is appropriate, necessary healing pain. But then there's what we call dirty pain, which is all the worry and anxiety of like, oh my gosh, this is my fault. If I would have done a better job as his mom, that's guilt and shame, right? Then there's worry about the future, or there's again, if my kid is making bad choices, it's the storytelling about how everything else that's going to go wrong later, or what are people going to think. None of that pain is useful or necessary. It's not wrong. Like we all do it to a certain extent. But when you recognize, like, wait a second, that's all just because of the way I'm thinking about this situation. It always
Mhm.
comes down to what you're thinking and believing. And I can choose to think and believe, this is terrible. I can't believe this is happening. Or I can think, yeah, this is the way of it. This is actually God's plan. And it's okay for my child to struggle. It's even okay for my kid to make mistakes. And how do I process that pain and feel the pain and allow the pain for myself rather than resist it? But at the same time, decide what I want to think about it. Kind of
Right.
like you said, Melissa, with the reframing.
Intentionally, right? Like not just
Yes.
letting our thoughts take control of us. Yeah.
So this is
Yeah.
something I do. I'm a little bit of an anxious worry person, and so I
Okay.
do on a regular basis have to tell myself this isn't my problem, this isn't something for me to worry about, and kind of let that go. The
Yeah.
thing that my wife struggles with more than me is the blame thing. So like
Mhm.
over the weekend I did something, and the end result was like my son lost his bike on the highway, on the freeway.
Okay.
Anyhow, and
Mhm.
somehow this was like my fault, because for my wife the primary motivation is blame. Like it's she's trying to avoid like blaming herself, right? So we spend a lot
Yes.
of time in our family like, how do we do things so that she doesn't feel like it's her fault? Is this a common thing, or is my wife
Yes.
unusual?
No, your wife is healthy and normal, and so are you. I call it the shame blame trap. So
uh,
we literally get stuck in a trap because the brain is trying to sort through like what's gone wrong here, whose fault is this, or and sometimes who can be a what, an organization or whatever, right? But so it feels terrible to think, oh, I must have messed up here, and so we try to jump out of that into like, no, wait, maybe you messed up here. But
mm,
then the brain keeps rationalizing with like, no, that's probably not true. It's probably your fault. And so we stay stuck in this trap. I call it a trap because it's just like a loop, shame
mhm.
and blame. And the easiest way out of it is to recognize there's actually nothing wrong
Hmm.
in the end. Like
Like
we're
mistakes happen, bad things happen.
bad things happen, and even labeling them bad is, we don't know. It's like the old story, right, about the man who I can't tell that story because I don't remember all the details. Let me just use your example as a point. I was going to tell this story, and I'm like, wait, how does it start? So your son's bike was what, ruined or lost on the highway?
Yeah. He didn't attach it to the bike rack well enough. So as he's
Okay.
driving down the road, it falls off the vehicle, and we don't know
So
where it is.
So we label that as bad because now he's out of bike, right?
Yeah.
But what if that bike hadn't fallen off, he would have gotten on the bike and then gotten in a terrible accident and been terribly injured. And having lost the bike actually prevented some kind of a disaster that was just up ahead.
Mm-hmm.
If
Yeah.
that were true, we would have gone, thank goodness that bike fell off and he couldn't have ridden that bike.
Or like if he had to slow down and missed an accident or something like that.
Exactly. And we don't know that. And I'm not trying to say like everything is orchestrated like down like a chess pieces. I'm just saying even labeling it bad, or maybe even like maybe your son is going to really appreciate his next bike even more.
Mm-hmm.
And gain a greater appreciation for things that are valuable and take better care or something because of that. So even saying it was bad, and please don't misunderstand. I'm not saying we should just think positively about everything.
No, I see what you're saying.
I'm just saying it's all just a story. It's all subjective.
Yeah.
And when you recognize that, you're like, wait a second, that I'm trying to do this shame blame thing because I just assume it's a given that something went wrong. That's all I'm saying. Instead of like,
you're saying we tell stories to ourselves based on outcomes that we think are like objective, or we think we know what's really going on.
yes,
But really nobody knows the big picture of what's really going on. So if all we're doing is telling ourselves a story anyways, why not shift the way we tell that story to ourselves?
That's exactly right. And especially when it comes down to the areas where we don't like the result we're creating. So if your wife's like, I don't really like fighting with my husband over this thing, then she might at some point decide, so I'm going to just chalk it up to like, we're a bunch of humans doing the best we can. Sometimes our best is great. Sometimes it's bad. And and who knows in the end if that was a blessing in disguise or just a dumb accident. Who knows? All I know is I just want to get along with my husband.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or for you, right? Because she's not even here. For you,
Yeah.
it would be like, okay, I'm going to just, maybe my wife is mad at me, but I don't have to be mad that she's mad at me.
Right. Because I was, by the way, very mad that she was mad at me.
Right. Understandably, because you're a healthy human. Again, you don't need a therapist, you need a coach.
So Jody, this reminds me of a story that Matt and I covered in our weekly podcast where we kind of do updates on the news. And it was a story about a bunch of people responding to Elder Holland, remarks that he made and saying he should just apologize. Why doesn't he just apologize? Because that would make people feel better. And in our podcast, I said, well, I don't think it's Elder Holland's responsibility to control the way that everybody feels and responds to him. And I got some talk back about that was like, but people should care about what they say and how it makes other people feel. And I was like, well, I wonder what Jody Moore would say about this. Because what would you say about that, Jody Moore?
What would I say about that?
Even not just the Elder Holland thing, right? Like,
right.
No, just in general.
Should public figures apologize to everyone that's hurt by things they say?
Or should they hold responsibility for how people, feel about comments? Like in my daily life, I'm always like, well, I didn't make you feel that way. Like you chose to feel that way.
But she does make me feel that way.
Don't worry, you'll catch up, Matt. We'll get you there. No, okay. It's such a good question. I'm glad you're asking this question because what we often do with tools like this, and we do this with our religion too, we do it with all kinds of things, is we take the tool and we use it to determine how other people should be. Right?
Okay.
Like, and the listeners are doing that. Like the people that are saying like Elder Holland should apologize, they're taking just their overall principle of kindness or whatever. And you're taking your belief in like, no, we're all responsible for our own feelings. We create them. And we're both, in both cases, we're using it to determine how other people should be, right? Like should public authorities apologize because they're not responsible? And that's a misuse of the tool. It's like using it to judge one another. So the truth is, I don't know if Elder Holland or any other public figure should apologize. Only Elder Holland knows that, right?
Right. Yeah.
The tool is for yourself. So the reason it's so powerful to understand, wait, I create my feelings with my thoughts. Elder Holland doesn't make me feel anything when he says anything he says. I feel it based on what I think when I listen to his words. Okay. The reason that's so powerful is because it makes me the driver in my own life and it gives me power in my own life. And I want that power. I want it to be my fault when I'm offended or hurt or whatever. And sometimes I still want to be offended. I just like knowing that I've created it because I like this belief system I have. So when people say that, right, shouldn't he apologize? I'm like, I don't know. In the end, if he's not apologizing, right, and then we're left with whether he should or shouldn't is sort of an irrelevant question.
Right.
Yeah.
The question is, how do I want to feel? And maybe you want to feel offended. I'm cool with that. Just know that you're creating it with what you're thinking, and you might have a good reason for what you're thinking. You might choose to keep it because then you stop walking around trying to control the world. And you spend more time choosing who you want to be. And I'll just give one other example might be helpful to people because like this often comes up when we're raising kids, right? Well, don't we want to teach our kids to be considerate of how other people feel? Isn't that? And I say, yes, of course. But there's a difference between consideration and awareness and ownership of.
Okay.
So instead of like, hey, don't say that, you might hurt her feelings. I say, hey, don't say that. It's not very nice. And you're nice. Don't you like being nice? Doesn't it feel good to be nice? But in the end, this girl might be upset about something else, right? Or about what we think is nice. So I just try to keep the ownership appropriate. And if they come home saying this happened and it hurt my feeling, this guy hurt my feelings, I say, well, I'm so sorry you're feeling that way. What did you think when he said that? What did you make it mean? I'm just trying to show them their own power there. So
yeah.
So Jody,
That makes sense.
I'm very, very impressed with you as a person. If you don't mind, I want to dig in a little bit to
yes,
like
please.
who you are and this journey. So I'm going to start with a little story about myself.
Okay.
That's going to
good.
sound weird for
This will be
people,
fun.
but it's to lead into questions about you. Okay,
I
so
love it.
when I was in high school, I would come home from school and I would turn on like the Phil Donahue show or like the Oprah Winfrey show or like these kind of like, and they would have these experts on, and the experts always had PhD after their name. And then they would be like, I wrote this book. And so, to my mind, as a young person, if you wanted to have authority or a voice or expertise, you had to get like a PhD, and then you could write a book on a subject, and then Oprah Winfrey would care what you had to say. But what I'm hearing from you is you were in a space in your life that you were not pleased with, and you said, I'm going to go like find a solution to the challenges I'm facing. And then once you did that, you said, wow, this is really great. I'm going to share this with other people. And if I'm mischaracterizing your story, I hope you'll correct it. But the question for me is like, where does that come from? Because to me, that is an unusual thing.
Yeah.
I know so many people that are, first of all, afraid to go find the answer. And then when they do, they lack the confidence to say, this really works for me. I want to share this with other people. So like, where does that come from for you?
I mean, it honestly does come from coaching because I am first and foremost my own client and I always have coaches. So I think what's confusing for people is it starts to feel binary. Like, am I going to think positively or negatively about this? Or am I going to think I don't have any right because I don't have a PhD and I'm not a published author? Or am I going to think it's fine? Like we want to simplify things down, and there's literally like hundreds to millions of thoughts available to us about any given circumstance, and even ones that for me could be believable and could empower me to do what I want. So it's like carefully selecting the way you're going to think about it. So when I decided I'm going to start sharing, well, first of all, it was just so life-changing for me that I couldn't stop talking about it. So anybody that was vaguely interested, I was like, and there's this and there's that. So I was just really, when you see a great movie and you want to tell everyone, that was a little bit what happened for me. But as I started putting myself out there more and deciding to really like build a business, my coach at the time was Brooke Castillo, who trained me. And that comes up for a lot of coaches. Like, well, coaching isn't even a real thing, right? It's not recognized by a lot of people. Who do we think we are, et cetera? And one of the thoughts she offered us was like, it's kind of cool though that people underestimate us, right? Like, just go ahead and underestimate us. It's fine. So a thought like that.
That takes courage, right? To like wear it as a badge of honor, to be like,
Yeah.
hate us, we don't care.
Like, it's
We
cool.
Yeah.
Just sit back and take notes, PhD. And then also, for me, the easiest way to get out of my own way with regards to what you're talking about is to stop thinking about me and whether or not I'm credentialed enough or worthy or know what I'm talking about, and start thinking about the people who are suffering because they don't know this.
Mm.
So it's just a quick redirect. I'm just like, okay, yeah, Jody Moore, it's true. You could be smarter. You could have more degrees. You could be all these things. There's no end to that game, right? There's just as many people with PhDs feeling inadequate. And so, or we could just think about the woman sitting at home right now with a bunch of kids who's miserable and she's overeating and she hates her body and her marriage is struggling and she's going to church and reading her scriptures and saying her prayers and wondering why it's not working. And
Yeah.
when I redirect to her, I'm like, who cares what anyone thinks of me? Or what I do have some things that I know can help that woman.
Right.
So I'm going to go help her.
Yeah. Okay, but what about playing in this Latter-day Saint space? Because I imagine it's kind of delicate because you are someone that has great information and that people look up to, and it's done through kind of this religious lens, but also, you're doing this because you feel like internally, like in a way called to do it. But then is it hard because I imagine people want to put you on a pedestal religiously as well?
I don't know. I just honestly, I mean, I can share a few examples, but I
Okay.
don't spend a lot of time thinking about that. Again,
Mhm.
I call it managing your mind. So I have gotten a few crazy things of people like, they don't, I got some hair extensions and I got some people tell me that's very worldly. And,
Oh.
like I get a little bit of,
Wow. How nice of them.
I know. I was like, all right, well, I mean, I have lots of problems. That's actually the least of our concerns, but, um, so I get some of that, or people sometimes are like asking me if I've left the church. I don't know why, what would make them think
Yeah.
that, but whatever. Um, I don't spend a lot of time thinking about that because that would create for me a lot of pressure. I
Mm.
spend my time thinking about the people who my message is resonating with. Because there
Mhm.
are always going to be people who it doesn't resonate with, or
Yep.
like I don't even spend time thinking about, like, when you say, I think everybody knows who you are. I'm like, no, people don't. Because when I was in Idaho Falls, I went to church on Sunday. Not one person recognized me. So,
But they were all whispering. They're like, there's a celebrity in church today. There's a celebrity. We hope she shares her testimony.
I mean, I did have a few people recognize me in the Walmart in Rexburg,
Okay,
Oh,
okay.
but
okay. All right.
that was fun. But anyway, I don't spend much time thinking about that, right? Because it just doesn't serve me to. I spend
Mhm.
my time thinking about, um, I'm a good faithful member of the church, and also I make so many mistakes and I fall short in so many ways. That's where true confidence is. That's one of the principles I teach. Confidence isn't like, yeah, I'm great and let me remind myself how great I am. Confidence is, I'm great and I'm not great, and it's all lovable and it's all okay. It's just where I am right now, and we're just going to keep growing and trying and improving, and you'll always be, Jody, both great and not great. And
Yeah.
what anybody else thinks of me is not about me. It doesn't
Yeah.
tell, like, when people come up to me in Walmart and say, "Oh my gosh, I love," or you say your mom loves me, that tells me about your mom.
Mhm.
That doesn't tell me about me. Like,
Yeah.
your mom doesn't even really know me, right?
Yeah.
So I'm just so aware of that because of this work that I just don't put that pressure on myself.
So,
Cool.
so to get even more personal again,
Yeah, let's
so
go.
so it's kind of interesting in a marriage, especially as a long-lasting marriage, and people are inevitably going to change who they are over time. But sometimes you get these marital partners that are like, "Look, I was this way when you met me, and this is who I am, and you just have to put up with this." So I'm kind of curious, like when you're at this stage, I think you said it was about 10 years ago when you started making
Mhm.
these changes. How did your husband respond? Were you becoming like a new person? Like, I imagine you started acting, behaving, doing things differently.
Mhm.
How did your husband respond to this? Was he like, Jody, get
Well,
back to where you were. I want you home with the babies.
no.
I don't want them to
Well,
cry.
no, because I was struggling so much and he couldn't figure out how to help me that
Mm.
for me, it was a real positive change. And then I started making money at it. So he had no objections to that. But I have seen a lot of people go through what you're talking about, Matt, where it's like, even sometimes in a dynamic where maybe a couple fights a lot. And if I'm just working with one person, and she decides she's not going to argue anymore. She's just going to be like, okay, I see that you're upset and I love you, but let's talk about it later when we're calm because I don't want to fight with you. That can come across to the partner as like, oh, so now you just don't even care. Now you're just going to walk away and then start calling it stonewalling and whatever, right? So I always think of marriage as being like a dance. And we struggle, and then we try to change the other person. And then when that doesn't work, if we just decide to change ourselves instead, we've still changed the music. And our partner can't do the same dance if we're not playing our part. And so it is unsettling to people. And that's something that I help people work through. But it really comes down to just owning that we're all responsible for our own needs.
Mm-hmm.
Like I teach that, listen, you're not responsible for your partner's needs and he or she is not responsible for yours. And that's the best news I could give you because
Mm-hmm.
you're much better at making yourself happy than they are. And when you recognize that and you still go into it really open, like I encourage people to have discussions with their spouse, like give me your dream list of like 10 things I could do differently that you would prefer. And I'm not saying I'm going to be willing to meet them all, but I would, or even any of them, but I definitely want to know because some of them I might be willing to, or some of them they might be like, I wish you didn't wake up so grumpy. I'm like, you know what? I don't like waking up grumpy either. Maybe that's something I want to work on. So I encourage the communication. I want you to know what each other prefers. And as you both evolve and grow, you have to keep having those discussions. But in the end, everybody's responsible for their own happiness. And then when you can bring a whole, complete, happy you to your marriage, if both of you do that, you create something that couldn't exist on your own. But when we bring half of us and think our spouse is going to bring half and we're going to try to complete each other, that's just a mess.
Mm-hmm. I think a lot of people I know that go to couples therapy could use life coaching instead.
Amen.
Yeah. Because the people I know that go to couples therapy, it seems to me actually sometimes the therapist is on one side and like they team up against a spouse or something like that. But
Mhm.
also I think that couples therapy, the challenges that they're having isn't something you can solve in like a 30-minute session every other week or whatever it is.
That's right.
Yeah.
And again, there are some great couples therapists out there, but the traditional model is okay, you're going to tell your spouse, Matt, what your needs are, and she's going to tell you hers. Then you guys are going to try to meet them. And even if you agree, let's say your wife's like, I would like you to compliment me more. And you're like, okay, I could do that. Now you're trying to remember to compliment her and you're going through the motions because she asked you to.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And then she's like, he's only doing that because I told him to. It's not genuine.
It doesn't feel sincere.
Because you didn't say it quite right or at the right time or you missed one of them. And we all do it. It goes both ways, husbands and wives. So yes, we can ask someone to pretend so that we can then, in the end, your wife, if it does work, sometimes it does. And then it just doesn't usually last. But
Mm-hmm.
even when it does, it's not because my husband's complimenting me that I'm feeling better. It's because he compliments me. Then I allow myself to think, see, I'm a good wife, or I'm pretty enough, or I did a good job on dinner, or whatever it is. I just
Mm-hmm.
allow myself to believe that. And I'm asking my spouse to pretend. Could you please pretend for me? So anyway,
Yeah. A lot of the challenges in marriage really are about one of the people in the marriage or both there's something within them that they could
yes,
work on themselves and not work on the relationship, but work on whatever it is that's causing them discontent at the moment.
that's right. 100%.
Yeah.
Jody, can we shift gears? I want you to
Yes.
talk to us real quick about the new program you're kind of promoting right now. About Make Peace with Food.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
Okay, so well, let me back up. So I use the tools of coaching first to build my business, and
Okay.
I love entrepreneurship. I love marketing, and I love business. And so I see a lot of people struggle, like Matt said, it's a hard hard. How do you get the confidence and all of that? And I was like, what? You just don't think that. It's easy. And then there's the area of food. When I see some people who are really good at being healthy and eating how they want, and I could never get myself to do it. And they're like, what? Just don't eat that. Just eat this and exercise. So we all have areas, is my point, where it becomes easier and where it's harder. And for me, food was always really hard. Just changing my eating habits, and all the things that we know serve our bodies. So anyway, it's taken me years, but I've made huge leaps with it. And part of it is, I was pre-diabetic. Like they say, half of our country is pre-diabetic or insulin resistant. And I was finally able to address both the biology and the psychology. And I'm not taking Ozempic, and I think it's fine if
Wow.
anybody is. I'm not against whatever works for people, but
Yeah.
it's been so freeing for me I'm going to be 50 next month, and I'm like healthier than I've ever been. And more than anything, it's the nonstop chatter that we have, especially women, about our bodies and about food and what we should or shouldn't be eating. And I think in the LDS church, especially because outside of the church, I see a lot of people applying these tools around stopping over drinking, and alcohol is their buffer and things. And for us, it's shopping at Target and eating donuts or ice cream. And I'm not opposed to shopping at Target or eating donuts or ice cream. I don't plan to cut any of that stuff out of my life. I just think that there is an opportunity for us to evolve, because doing that stuff just is a quick escape from the real work that we have the opportunity to do. And I do think, again, that's why we're here on earth. I think that's our mission. And so I love helping people that want to work on that.
Yeah.
And so, how do people access? I would imagine you're in very high demand as a coach. So, how do people access these tools?
Yeah, so I do everything now in groups because it makes it more affordable for everybody. It allows me to get to everyone, and it actually works really. I don't know, Melissa, if you've ever heard any of the group coaching, but you hear other people and it clicks for you. So anyway, so they can just go to probably the best place to go. I don't know when this episode is going to air, but
Probably in 2 weeks.
Okay, so the Make Peace with Food Challenge will still be going on then. If anyone wants to go to jodymoore.com/food. And it's like, I think we charged $30 for it. You'll get 4 weeks of content and coaching, and you'll get to see what it's like. If that's gone, we always offer some kind of free or really inexpensive trial of coachings, and then we'll explain to you exactly how to join our coaching program if you choose. So jodymoore.com/masterclass will always be whatever is the current offering.
Oh, okay.
So yeah.
Can I ask you a bigger question about the industry generally?
Sure.
So there's in the news Jody Hildebrand, and there are other things. She's just the name that popped in my head. But I do know people that get afraid of coaching because they're like, they could be crazy. They could ruin my life. You never know. You can't trust these people. What's your perception of how the industry generally is? Is Jody Hildebrand a good representation of what the industry is like, or is she an outlier?
Well, she's a therapist, first of all. So even with a credential like that, you do want to do your due diligence. But I will say with coaching, you have an even bigger bag of tricks to be cautious of. You're right about that, because it's not a regulated industry, right? Whereas therapy is. Coaching, you guys could just decide today that you're coaches and say that, and you're not doing anything wrong.
We'll talk about that after.
Yeah, I can help you with that if you want to.
People would love to hear what I have to say about their lives.
I think so.
I think that, like anything, I do say check stuff out. But because we are all susceptible, if you watched any documentaries about cults, we're actually susceptible to all kinds of stuff. But for me, I used to ask myself that question a lot too, because I am very liberal in my thinking, and I like to learn from all different kinds of teachers, and I don't want to lead myself someplace crazy. And so I always just go back to what the scriptures say, that by their fruits ye shall know them. And so if they're promoting love and kindness and compassion and Christ-like attributes, you're probably in good hands. If it's anything, and again, we're all susceptible to this, but if it's like, you should probably separate yourself from your family, or like,
Mm-hmm.
by their fruits ye shall know them. And but coaching is not regulated. So definitely that's why I offer a trial, because even though I consider myself to be a highly qualified good coach, I'm still not the right coach for everybody. Like, some people won't
Mm.
prefer my style, or it just won't resonate for them. And so I do think you should check stuff out and have some kind of a trial before you dive in.
Is Google the best way to check that stuff out? Like, is there any kind of like I wouldn't even need know, right? If I saw an online review or something, I would think, well, they probably just paid a marketing person to do that. Like,
Yeah.
is there
I mean,
anything?
most coaches that I know in this industry, and I know a lot of coaches, will offer some kind of a really inexpensive or free, like, trial session or trial class or something like that. You can ask people, they should be able to put some testimonials on their website a little bit, but
Mm-hmm.
you're right. Like, if somebody
Mm-hmm.
sends me a nasty testimonial, I don't put that one on my website. So I think that,
Yeah,
yeah,
it's got to
trying
be
it out.
hard because now I think about it. I was a coach at one time in my life. Right out of college, I was a business coach. I had
Mhm.
no business experience at all, and I would tell
Mm.
people how to grow their business. And it turns out, after a while, I looked at my client base and I was like, I don't think I'm very good at this. I don't think people should be paying me for this. But I did notice in that people get desperate, right? My business is failing. Who can help me? My life is in shambles. Who can help me? And they're
Mhm.
not necessarily the best consumers at that moment of like
Mm.
figuring out like, so probably they do need to like talk to friends, right? And talk to like people who love them and say, hey, I've been trying this sort of thing. Do you feel like this is positive in my life? Do you feel like I'm being more crazy? Because we did have a little bit of a cult mentality in our business consulting that we did. Like, you're right. It's easy to create a cult in coaching. And now I
I
feel like I
mean,
need to go repent or something for things I did when I was
no,
younger.
I mean, well, it is, we all are like this, where we kind of like to just have our current beliefs reinforced.
Mm-hmm.
And that's okay to a certain extent, but yeah, you want to be like, the kind of coaching I prefer as a client. I'm not an easy person to coach, I'll just say, because I don't just want someone to hold me accountable. I don't want them to say, so you're going to do this. Okay, next week I'm going to ask you if you did that.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that, but it's just really, like, kind of trivial. I want to be able to hold myself accountable. And I also don't just want someone constantly encouraging me, telling me I'm doing a good job. The kind that has been the most beneficial, and what I try to do for my clients, is just truth telling, right? Like,
Mm.
I'm just here to tell you the truth. I'm just here to point out to you that this thing you think is your observation of reality is just a thought. Like the way I
Mm-hmm.
showed you, like, your son losing his bike.
Yeah.
Maybe it's negative, maybe it's positive. I don't know. But I'm not here to tell you what you should do next time with the bike, or what you should say to your wife, or any of that. All I'm doing is showing you the truth. And that, when people show you the truth, which is sometimes hard to hear,
Yeah.
then you're completely empowered. Like, all progress starts from the truth. And
Wow.
so I do think with that kind of coaching, like, I'm not giving out advice to people. I'm just showing them their brains,
Mm-hmm.
and helping them find the truth. But yeah, there's all kinds of stuff out there.
Seriously, Jody, I'm seriously impressed with you. Like,
Thank
because I'm
you.
going to tell you now, as a former coach,
Yes.
telling people the truth is the worst way to make money. It's the
It,
worst way to make money.
well, it is if they didn't ask you for the truth.
Yeah.
That's the
Okay.
caveat. That's why I'm constantly reminding my clients, right? Like Melissa said, well, wait a second. We shouldn't be telling Elder Holland to apologize. He's not responsible for her feelings. Like, those people didn't ask you for the truth. They asked you
Right.
for validation that they're right and Elder Holland was wrong and he should apologize.
Yeah, right,
but
right. Yeah.
but when you so I don't coach people against their will. I
Mm-hmm.
I don't coach my friends or kids or anything in life. I only coach when I'm in a coaching session. And if I have to say something really hard, I say, this might be hard for you to hear, and I'm going to tell you because I care enough about you to tell you. Are you ready?
And do your kids say, Mom, don't ever say that? I hate it when you say
No, I don't do that to my kids. I do it with my clients.
Oh, okay. Okay.
With my kids, I just smile and say everything's fine.
Oh, that's great.
Anyway,
Well, Jody, thank you so much for being with us.
thanks for having me.
I literally knew nothing about you, and now I think you're just such a great person
Thank you.
because that says more about me than it does
It
about you.
does. That's absolutely true.
Hey, listener, we're glad you joined us this week, and we hope you'll tune in for future interviews in weeks to come. Thanks for being with us. Thank you, Jody.
Thanks, you guys.